Welcome back. We're going to talk politics with Margaret Carlson and Cato Byrne in just a moment. But we start with the Supreme Court ruling this week on voting rights and schoolhouse strip searches. Bloomberg's Greg Stohr is at the court for us. Greg, the High Court's winding down for a court that was supposed to have a moderate conservative majority. The liberals did all right this session.
They certainly did, and those are two big examples in this last week. Both of those were 8-1 decisions. Both of those, based on the arguments, a lot of people thought were going the other way, but as it turns out, liberals in one case won a significant victory in the school strip search case and basically dodged a bullet in the Voting Rights Act case.
Let me get back to how misleading the arguments can be in just a moment, but I believe it was Mr. Dooley said the Supreme Court follows the election returns. Was that reflected in the voting rights decision?
It's certainly possible, and they're obviously very cognizant that we have a Democratic president, Democratic Congress. They know that we have the first black president in the White House, and it would have been a major, major step for the Supreme Court to say, in spite of what those people think, we're going to strike down a central component of the signature law, the Voting Rights Act.
Greg, this court in recent years has been famous or infamous, in your point of view, for 5-4 decisions. Same this time?
There have actually been 25-4 decisions, but the ones in this last week weren't. We've had two significant examples of the court coming together and forming a consensus. In both cases, only Clarence Thomas dissented. Things may change as we get into the last decisions on Monday, but there's at least a couple big decisions from this court that are not divisive.
Well, you mentioned earlier that sometimes oral arguments can be misleading as far as a predictor. Conservatives, however, are counting on winning a big win on Monday in that affirmative action case with the New Haven firefighters. The oral arguments suggest that they may well win that and overturn Judge Sotomayor.
That is certainly what the argument suggested, and certainly based on past race cases at the Supreme Court, one would expect Anthony Kennedy to vote to overturn. That being said, there is a fair amount of middle ground that's at least a possibility in that ruling, so it may not be a complete victory for conservatives. Okay,
Greg Stohr, thanks a lot. It's been an interesting session as usual. Let me turn now to Margaret and Kate. This really is not the sex segment. I promise. I know that. But once again, Margaret, this week, the wildest Hollywood scriptwriter could not have come up with the Mark Sanford case.
No, they couldn't. You know, falling in love is a form of temporary insanity, and it was on display during that press conference, rambling, meandering, covering a lot of territory, including most of the Appalachian Trail. What differentiated this press conference from all the ritual press conferences was that he appears to be not throwing the girl under the bus like Monica. There's no that woman. He appears to have inadvertently fallen in love. He did not come across as a cheater. The state troopers are not spiriting women in and out of hotels, and he's no John Edwards going in through the basement. It makes it much more difficult.
For anybody who doesn't know the case, this is the South Carolina governor who disappeared to be with his lover in Argentina and left the wife and 4 kids. It was seemingly one of the great happy marriages in American politics. Kate, it really is bizarre, and it's got to end Mark Sanford's political career.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it does, Al. It is South Carolina. I think there's going to be enormous sympathy in South Carolina for the terrible ordeal his wholly innocent family's going through. Now, I think people probably feel, as Margaret explained, some sympathy for him, too. He's so clearly tormented, even though, of course, in his case, he's wholly responsible for it. He's the latest politician behaving badly. Again,
disproportionately this time, Republicans. That may change next month, for all we know. But
yeah, no, it's definitely a bipartisan phenomenon.
It has been, no question. But is it spilling over and hurting Republicans?
Sometimes it hurts Republicans. An incident like this hurts Republicans more because, frankly, their voters in their constituency is less patient with it. Right. They've got a more conservative constituency who actually takes them at their word.
Republicans seem to be surviving, however. David Vitter in Louisiana, John Ensign in Nevada, they appear to be surviving, whereas Bill Clinton was impeached. John Edwards has been drummed out of the Democratic Party. They are dead.
Well, let's see. Let me ask one more question, and that is that I don't know what the segue is here, Kate, but Barack Obama really was smoking this week about being asked about smoking.
Well, Maria in Argentina could be smoking hot. You may have missed that. You may have missed that segue.
I avoided that, Kate.
He clearly was annoyed that the White House press corps keeps pressing him on whether or not he's sneaking cigarettes. I can't help thinking it's because they're implying that he might be less than perfect, that he might actually have a human frailty, but he underestimates their infatuation. I think he could light up at the podium, and they think he's so fabulous that they just see smoking as hip and cool. Half of them would probably take up smoking to be more like Barack.
Kate may well be right, Margaret, but it's certainly a legitimate question.
It's absolutely a legitimate question because we're regulating tobacco. I think it helps him if only he would embrace the imperfection of smoking. You know, here's a guy who nibbles vegetables from his own garden, shoots hoop, takes his wife on date night. I mean, come on. A little imperfection will be a very good thing for this president.
I promise you all next week the segment will not be on sex and smoking. Anyway, thank you both.
Thank you.
And thank all of you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.